when I hear people argue about like a cheaper, faster L1 or something like that, my bullshit meter goes up quite a bit. What I think is really important in crypto is kind of new social innovations. I think the technical innovation is vastly overrated. For an L1 to just come along and be like cheaper and faster than Ethereum, I don't think that matters much at all.
This episode is brought to you by Carbon. Carbon is a new DEX on Ethereum that makes concentrated liquidity super easy. With Carbon, LPs can now automate your liquidity strategy with custom on-chain limit and range orders, all from a beautiful UI. Check out Carbon today for unprecedented control over your liquidity. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Empire. We have Nick Tomaino, founder of One Confirmation, joining us. Nick, welcome to Empire, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Lot to cover here. I want to start with, you've had some hot takes against kind of the crypto VC crowd, I will say. I'm just going to read a couple of these, and then maybe that can spark an interesting little conversation or debate here. July 1st, so about a month ago, you tweeted, "Venture capital is the fakest industry on the planet. In what other industry can you objectively be bad at your job, but create narratives that make you appear great to the outside world for years?" Earlier this year, maybe it was last year, I remember you tweeted, "Venture capital is the dumb money in crypto." And there's a bunch of these kind of tweets that follow the same line of reasoning. Tell us what's behind these tweets.
I would say the main thing is that as a venture capital investor, the job is to make good investments, right? It's to generate returns for LPs, and that's not what the focus is for most venture capitalists, especially to the outside world, right? So like performance is never discussed. The SEC actually makes that hard and is part of the reason for this. But I think, the culture in Silicon Valley venture capital is to, be perceived as smart or good at your job. And you can do that really well without actually being good at your job. So that's kind of the main reason I tweeted that. It's like, it just feels, after being in it, and I came into this world as a complete outsider, right? So I didn't know what venture capital was. Coming out of college, I then got on Twitter early and dove really deep and kind of became an insider, right? Joined Coinbase, then started one of the first crypto venture funds. So I kind of, had an outsider perspective, then became an insider. And now being in it for, 5+ years, it just feels very fake to me. There's, a lot of these big brands that, create kind of, an elitist narrative that they're the smartest guys in the room without actually being that. And that's how most of not just crypto, but Silicon Valley venture capital is.
How do, if I were to survey like 20, 30 people, how would they describe, and what's your edge, and how would they describe One Confirmation?
We are crypto native investors that invest in products that we understand deeply from a user perspective. So how I got into crypto, I was buying Bitcoin back in 2012. And to do that back then in the US, I was in Portland, Maine, taking out cash out of an ATM and then going to a local Walgreens and MoneyGramming it to Mt. Gox, right? That was like the early UX for crypto. And then I saw Brian Armstrong launch Coinbase on Hacker News. And it just solved a very simple problem for me, which was, buy Bitcoin with a bank account rather than having to, do all this stuff in the physical world. And I became one of the first 100 or so users of Coinbase that way. And that's how we invest. We just use products. That was how we got involved in OpenSea very early as well. I was one of the first users in OpenSea because I was, buying and selling CryptoKitties. And to do that initially, you had to go to the CryptoKitties website. They charged 5%. What's the true benefit of an NFT, right? It's true ownership, and you should be able to trade this anywhere. And so I found OpenSea, and it, again, very simple problem at the time that served a very niche audience, which was allow people to trade CryptoKitties for 2% rather than 5%. So that's how we invest. We're very practical. We're not trying to create narratives or sound really smart or things like that, which I hear a lot of. The vast majority of crypto investors, especially, do this. I hear a lot of, explaining why X L1 is better technically or something like that, and I think a lot of that is bullshit. To be honest, it's for crypto to matter, it's about products that are useful. So we're only investing in products that are useful to us, and it just so happens that products that are useful to us kind of early tend to be products that are useful for the masses, in the long term.
This is interesting because over the last, you guys have been around for what, 6-7 years now?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we started in, I guess, almost 6. We started
6.
in 2017.
Yeah, and there's a common recent debate now, which is, are we investing too much in infrastructure, and where are the consumers? Like, block space is empty right now. You could argue there's a deficit of infrastructure, like a surplus of infrastructure, not enough really good consumer applications. So when you say that you're investing in things that you use, maybe give us a few examples, because obviously you could argue that sure, OpenSea is probably one of the things that has gotten the most amount of consumer traction, but still it's super early. So I am curious, over the course of 6 years, where have you always had this strategy? Because candidly, mainstream is not here and hasn't been. So how do you think about investing in that versus, other things that
I mean,
maybe you're not using?
mainstream is here. It's not here in a big way, but I mean, NFTs brought mainstream into crypto in a way that no other product has, right? So I think we still have a ways to go for mainstream, but yeah, I mean, we're just looking for products that get us excited, right? And again, I think most investors, especially when you have a lot of money and you raise massive funds, you're just investing in narratives. So how do you explain FTX getting 200 million or whatever from Sequoia, right? You have a massive fund and you have to invest in a narrative without understanding how the thing actually works or being an actual user of the product. So, we're just very laser focused on products that we understand. It doesn't have to be from a user perspective. It could also be from a developer's perspective. It's a very practical approach to is this product interesting? And we don't give a shit about whether the narrative is interesting or not. And I think most investors are too focused on narrative.
Nick, are there any? I heard you say this maybe a year or two ago on a panel. I think this was you who said it. You said the stronger the narrative is, the further it is from the truth. And it kind of ties into this conversation that we're having today. What are some narratives that you see in crypto, whether it's around L1s or L2s or app chains or real I guess anything? What are some narratives that you see today that you're just kind of your bullshit flag goes up?
I mean, I'm trying to think of one right now. I mean, certainly one that has been maybe the biggest narrative over the past 5 years has been Next Gen L1s, right? That has been a very strong. That's been the narrative that has arguably caught kind of retail more than anything, and to me, that's a very strong narrative. That's for the most part to date been bullshit. And again, when I hear people argue about a cheaper, faster L1 or something like that, my bullshit meter goes up quite a bit. Because to me, what I think is really important in crypto is kind of new social innovations. I think the technical innovation is vastly overrated. And so for an L1 to just come along and be cheaper and faster than Ethereum, I don't think that matters much at all. For an L1 to come along and have a new social innovation, like a new governance, a radical approach to on-chain governance, or a sovereign chain approach where you're not going to have one chain that every app settles on, but you're going to have a bunch of app chains that all are interconnected. Like those are the types of things that I think are actually underrated because they're a little hard, right? In saying that, the stronger the narrative, the further from the truth. Another way to look at that is the truth is nuanced, right? So most people don't appreciate nuance. And so if you want to just get a lot of people to believe something, you lack nuance and you state something that is far from the truth. And the truth being nuanced, I think as an investor, like that's where you can actually do really well, is if you appreciate truth. You invest in these nuanced kind of projects. And so again, an example of that would be like something like Solana is this very clear narrative, right? Cheaper, faster Ethereum. That makes sense to people. That excites people. I think that's something that doesn't really matter in the long term. I think it's a clear narrative that is not that important. Whereas something like Cosmos, which it doesn't have this clear narrative that you can relate to something that already exists that makes a lot of sense. It's sovereign chains. Most people don't appreciate that or care about that. But I think that's the type of thing that's really that's a nuanced truth that is better off for investors long term. So that's kind of how I think.
How do you marry that with this idea that sometimes the best product doesn't win, in the sense like VHS Betamax, for instance? Sometimes the best tech does not win for a variety of reasons. So, I mean, it's quite early in crypto still, but do you think about that when you're investing? I mean, obviously, around this idea of nuanced truth, like Cosmos, for instance, we had Zaki and those guys. I mean, super interesting, like Tendermint, super battle tested, but they don't have a marketing team. They don't have the BD muscle that other protocols have. They don't have as many resources. Do you ever think about that or in this kind of idea of investing kind of in a counter narrative, nuanced way?
I mean, we're very focused on authenticity. So again, my bet when I invest is that the authentic wins over time, and things like marketing and BD don't matter that much. And I think people that come from outside of crypto, they don't really get that or believe that. And again, that's my long-term bet. We've been betting on it since the beginning, and we still are. I'm not saying that's definitely going to play out in crypto, but I think it has for the most part to date, right? So it's we're investing in authentic, kind of first of its kind projects that we think are meaningfully innovative from a social perspective, that are pushing the space forward. And again, as an investor that takes that approach in crypto, it can be very frustrating at times, right? Because in the short term, you see teams that have great marketing, great BD, really shining and thriving, and especially in a bull market, it takes a lot of juice out of these authentic projects. But look, I mean, FTX had great marketing and great BD, right? And they were really shining in the short term, but we know what happened. So I think betting on authenticity, if you can have a long-term perspective, and I think that's also something that a lot of people in crypto don't have, right? It's like it's hard. It's easy to say have a long-term perspective, but it's harder to actually do. And so, by betting on kind of authentic first of its kind projects that we understand from a user perspective, that's I think a really good way to invest in crypto, and we've kind of shown that over the past 6 or so years.
A lot of the issue in crypto is how do you structure a fund? Obviously you have like tokens and you can get liquidity much faster while you're still investing like in a very venture-like manner. How are your funds structured? And how do you think about kind of the life cycle of an investment for example, OpenSea?
Venture fund. So my friend Olaf from Polychain, he started really the first crypto fund, and he left Coinbase to start Polychain in I think mid 2016, and he structured it initially as a hedge fund, and the hedge fund structure. You guys probably know this, but for those that don't, it's you get carry on an annual basis, and that's the core difference between a hedge fund and a venture fund. Whereas a venture fund, the GP, the manager of the fund, doesn't get carry until the LPs are in the profit. So I kind of always thought that this hedge fund structure, which Olaf kind of started, and obviously Polychain has done incredibly well, and kind of led the first wave of crypto funds, I would say. And because Polychain did it incredibly well, and everyone saw this crypto fund hedge fund that was killing it, a lot of, especially that kind of 2016, 2017 wave of funds took this hedge fund approach, right? Which is, again, as a fund manager, if you have $100 million fund that's up 100% in year one, you're getting carry on that, and your LPs are not. And so there's this fundamental misalignment in incentives between the GP and the LP with that structure. So we took a very simple approach, and I think we were one of the first, if not the first, to do it. Is we're going to invest in both companies and in cryptocurrencies, but we're going to do it in a venture fund structure, right? So we're going to be aligned with our LPs by only making carry when our LPs are in the profit. So that's the structure. And we now have 3 venture funds and a NFT fund, and that's the structure for all our funds. Is traditional venture fund, 10-year life of the fund. You get a management fee and you get carry. You only earn your carry when the LPs are in the profit. So that's the way we've done it, and I think that's the best structure for a crypto fund. Unless, and I haven't really seen this, but unless you're truly able to generate kind of alpha trading or something like that on a annual basis, and that's kind of how these hedge funds justify that type of carry structure, especially in the traditional world. But I haven't seen many that do it, right? Most of the crypto hedge funds are just going long crypto and not really trading or able to generate alpha short term.
Nick, I have one more question on venture stuff, and then maybe we can move on to more maybe crypto native conversation here about some of the theses that you guys have laid out. Your partner, Richard, wrote a blog post on a couple different things in venture going on right now. And one of them was about the only way to be successful in venture is to either have a very small, what he calls a sniper fund, or be a large, almost like index fund, where you're basically just indexing the space. And I think it was his words, not mine, where he said there is no in between. It's a no man's land in between the small sniper funds and the index funds. Why is that the case? And also, Santi, I'm curious if you, as Nick kind of lays that out, I'm curious if you would agree or disagree with that. But yeah, Nick, curious to hear your thesis there.
I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that. Clearly, as a small fund, if you can, maintain a relatively small fund size and be disciplined about how you're investing, I think that's the best way to generate great returns for your LPs, right? Because it's just simple math. If you have a $25 million fund and you make one good investment, that can return the fund 5 times over. If you have $1 billion fund, there's just not, you don't have that opportunity to generate great returns. So it's simple math. In terms of in the middle, so I guess it would depend how you define fund size, and what's small, what's in the middle. But I mean, I think there's probably, I would say, we've taken the approach of not raise more than 200 million in fund size. I think if you go over that, then you just have to be an index fund. And again, that's investing in narratives where you're not really understanding things, and you're maybe missing the great early stage stuff, but then getting in later where it's already clear. So that's why a Sequoia can invest 200 million in FTX and still be fine. Like they're still going to have probably decent returns for their LPs because they have such a big fund, they can kind of weather that. But what we found, what we really like is investing in products before there's a clear narrative, right? Like when we invested in OpenSea, NFTs weren't a category, and it's not like OpenSea was, unknown in Silicon Valley. They went through Y Combinator, and they were talking about digital goods and why digital goods were going to be important. And no one in Silicon Valley wanted to give them money. I mean, they were not a hot company coming out of Y Combinator. And then OpenSea explodes, and then NFTs become a thing, and everyone wants to invest in that narrative. When the narrative is clear, the best investments are gone. And so that's why for our fund, and even now, like we're investing in things that there's not a clear narrative around, right? We want to be investing in, and that's when the best investments can be made. And that's why, as a sniper fund, you can kind of do that. As a as a bigger fund, even maybe a medium-sized fund, it's like you have to write bigger checks. You have to invest in things when there's clear product market fit. The return profile is lower for that. So
what are some of those things that you think are kind of have no narrative or early that you're excited about now?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not no narrative at all. Actually, oftentimes it's not, right? Because like even NFTs in 2018, there was a small community of people that was really obsessed with NFTs. Even back then, it was just there was no narrative for normies or even kind of techies that weren't super in crypto, right? It's like so we want to be investing in things that there's not a clear narrative, but there is a small group.
The underlyings, like you had like CryptoKitties explode and congest Ethereum, and people were writing them off like this is never going to work. But like you could have looked at that and said, my God, there's like you're triggering a consumer behavior here, and you could see the long-term path of it being huge. And so you invest in OpenSea.
And oftentimes there's also there's examples of like things that have been tried before that haven't worked. And so people point to those a lot. And that was true with NFTs as well. It's like, there was, colored coins and, a bunch of stuff in NFTs that was happening on Bitcoin even before Ethereum. And people, would point to that and say, oh, that didn't work. Why would it work this time? So and one example of that that I feel really strongly about is prediction markets. So prediction markets, you guys know what prediction markets are.
I think we're both investors in Polymarket.
Okay, nice. So prediction markets is one where, they've been around for a while. They're not, completely novel, but, there's a small community of people that like them. And I think, they have about as good a shot as any as being like the next crypto product that really captures mainstream attention. So that's one example.
And I guess there you would have looked at Augur, which was kind of the first really to try this out, and it kind of didn't really go anywhere. But then you kind of meet the founder of Polymarket, and you get excited about the category at a time where most people were writing off the category because you had Augur that kind of didn't go anywhere. And it was like,
we invested in Augur, and we were very close to that project when it launched. We also invested in Veil out of our first fund, which was another company that tried prediction markets and it didn't work. So I think it's going to work at some point, and
Nick,
that's the category that you're really excited about.
How do you think about prediction markets in context of like dissolution of public trust in institutions, because in my mind those kind of go hand in hand, right? As we truth for society used to come from governments and institutions and the New York Times and folks like that.
Mm-hmm.
As truth goes down, it's nearly impossible to find the truth. And it feels like to me, if you had a global, super liquid prediction market at scale, that's the best way in the world to reveal like true information. But I'm curious if that's like how much that aligns with your thesis on prediction markets.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. I think
Yeah.
markets are fundamentally a better source of truth than media and narratives. Right. Again, it comes down to even what you asked me at the beginning about Silicon Valley and why I feel like it's mostly bullshit, and it's because it's the culture is more about narrative than actually performance and markets. And I would love the culture in venture to shift more to one where it's markets and performance that matters over narratives. But I don't know if that will happen. But prediction markets, I think, has the ability to do that to culture in general, where
Hmm.
it's not just about the narrative. It's about people with skin in the game that are speculating on outcomes, and I think that has the ability to bring a lot more truth to the world.
Hmm.
The other kind of this is kind of something that Shane from Polymarket told me that I very much believe in now, that I think is a little underrated is um, why did NFTs work so well? Why have they worked, and why will they continue to work? I think a big part of it is the fact that they're a great business model for creators, right? Being a new business model, as everyone in the world is becoming a creator if they want. NFTs are kind of a new business model, and I think we're still kind of early in that journey of people appreciating that. But I think the same can be true about prediction markets, um, particularly when like Polymarket or someone else launches create your own markets, and any influencer, on social media can essentially create their own market and generate fees on that. So I'm pretty bullish on. I mean, you see, even in the past month, like prediction markets, uh, you know, colliding with culture, and the submarine market on Polymarket like went viral
Right.
completely out
Right.
of crypto. I don't think many people in crypto even knew about it or cared about it, but this was, and we're seeing influencers start talk about these markets, and I think prediction markets as a business model for creators could be quite interesting. So that's kind of an area that I'm excited about in
Hmm.
prediction market in particular. And I think again, it's I like Polymarket, but I think there's probably going to be many others in this space. And
Yeah.
right now, I think you have to tip your cap to Shane and Polymarket, because they've grinded it out in a space that there's been interest, but most haven't grinded it out. And I also think that's often what you see when you get a big winner in a category. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of many categories that we're excited about right now that we think could really be the next. We always think about this lens of like what could be the next product that really pushes crypto into the mainstream.
I've
What
heard
what
you
else are
talk
some of
about,
the
be excited about. Well, I was going to say, I heard you talk about DAO tooling and DAOs in general. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the thesis there and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think a lot about is like, can we get to products beyond the primary thing being speculation and investment in money? And I think a lot of people kind of dismiss crypto because everything that's worked really to date has been about that. And I think that's just going to continue, because we all know that the traditional financial world was very restrictive, and doesn't allow a lot of different types of people to participate. And I think just being new financial markets and new money for more people in the world is obviously very important. So again, even something like prediction markets, which is a new category, I think is mostly about, speculation investment. But we also spend a lot of time thinking about like what are going to be the products beyond just speculation and investment. And if I were to bet, it's going to be about human organization. And obviously, we all know that's what a DAO is, right? It's kind of a new form of human organization that allows people from different parts of the world to contribute resources to this organization and be incentivized for it. And so, Bitcoin obviously was the first DAO, and DAOs are not something new in the space in any way, shape, or form. But I do think we still haven't seen products that make it easy for people to participate in DAOs. And that's kind of the thinking with DAO tooling. It's like, can we make it dead simple for people to, contribute resources to an organization and, receive something in return and grow. And that's kind of the idea with DAO tooling. So we've made, a couple investments in the space. I don't think it's necessarily within crypto. You guys are familiar with DAO tooling and probably have invested in some companies. So it's not, I don't think it's a very, contrarian view or anything like that. But I do feel that at some point we're going to have a mainstream product that just makes it dead simple for people to participate in DAOs.
Let's face it, concentrated liquidity is hard. And that's why I'm super excited to partner with Carbon for Empire. Carbon is a new DEX on Ethereum that makes concentrated liquidity easy. With Carbon, LPs can now automate your liquidity strategy with custom on-chain limit orders and range orders. Want to buy a token when it dips and sell it when it spikes? With Carbon, you can now set a strategy that buys in on one price range and sells in a higher range on repeat, using a single source of automated rotating liquidity. Strategies can be created for any standard ERC20 token. I recently checked out the Carbon beta that just dropped. Pretty blown away by the liquidity strategies that Carbon enables on chain. It has these rich trading features that you'd expect from a centralized exchange, except Carbon is fully on chain, decentralized, and non-custodial. Just connect your wallet. It's carbondefi.xyz. That's carbondefi.xyz. Choose a trading pair, set your buy and sell ranges and amounts, hit create, and you're done. Carbon automatically moves your liquidity into your selected ranges as the market moves. LPs, it is time to take back control of your liquidity with Carbon. Check out the link and get started today. Now, let's get back to Empire. Hey everyone, we'll get back to Empire in just a minute, but before we do that, I want to let you know that we have Permissionless coming up. Permissionless is a big conference that Blockworks and Bankless put on together. It is the biggest, the best DeFi conference in crypto. This year, it is in Austin, Texas, September 11th through 13th. If you've been in crypto for a while, you know that bear market conferences are the best kind of conferences. We have a phenomenal lineup of speakers. A lot of the guests that you hear on Empire are both going to be speaking there. You will have the opportunity to meet them there. And a lot of the topics that we cover on Empire, ZK Tech, rollups, account abstraction, MEV, app chain thesis, a lot of that kind of stuff, that will all be discussed at Permissionless this year. So because you are a listener of Empire, you get a special discount. That's right, Santi and I negotiated with our marketing team. You get 30% off if you go to blockworks.com/permissionless. Empire 30 is going to get you 30% off your ticket. Today, when I'm recording this, that's about $300 off your ticket. So type in Empire 30 when buying your Permissionless ticket, you get about $300 off. Click the link at the bottom of this episode. It's in the show notes. Do it quickly because prices go up all the time. And if you are going to Permissionless, hit me up, let me know, shoot me a DM on Twitter. I would love to meet up with you there. Nick, what's your working thesis on NFTs? And I guess I might bucket that as like maybe 3 different buckets. There's like OpenSea and like the marketplaces, and there's like a lot of marketplace competition right now. Then there's another bucket, which is I think you purchased 4156. Was this last last year for like 3 million or 3.5 million bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bought Punk 4156 for 3.3 million. So I'd love to just get your like working thesis around PFPs. And then there's this like more esoteric bucket of NFTs, which is like unlocking creators, like music NFTs, like royalty, like that kind of bucket that it feels like we saw at the very end of the NFT bubble, but that we'll
Mhm.
really see in the next cycle. What's your kind of, I don't know where you want to take that question or where you want to start there, but would love to just hear your working thesis around NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, I think NFTs in 5 years have a good shot at being actually larger as a category than cryptocurrencies. Um, and the reason I think that is because more people in the world care about culture than they do about just finance or money. And cryptocurrencies and DeFi very much about money and finance. And I just think NFTs kind of are the intersection of money and culture in a really unique way that just brings more people to investing. So I think in crypto in general, it fits very nicely with the trend that I think is true, which is just everyone in the world is becoming an investor, and that's a very empowering trend as well because I think people in crypto maybe take it for granted, but like 10 years ago, it's like most people in the US, they think, oh, to be an investor you need to be have a certain degree or work on Wall Street or something like that. And so I think NFTs as a investment category is going to continue to grow. And obviously, it's down quite a bit from the last bubble, but our conviction there is as stronger as ever, kind of long
Yeah.
term. We see bubbles come and go in crypto. So I guess the we could go into all the different categories there are in NFTs, which you guys know as well. Most of what's worked to date is crypto art, right? Is and that's kind of we have an NFT fund, and that's really what we've focused on to date. When we launched the NFT fund, we initially told LPs, we were going to invest, say, 50% of the fund in kind of high end crypto art and 50% of the fund in new projects, right? Because like anything in crypto, we feel that there's always new stuff that comes along that ends up maybe being bigger than the last thing. So it's important to be kind of on the forefront of investing in new projects. And I will say that since we launched the NFT fund last year, um, we haven't even come close to 50% in new projects. The pace and the quality of the new projects in NFTs has been lower than expected, I would say. So we've been mostly focused on kind of the high end crypto art, which I think is just a great store of value, just like it is traditional art is for traditional rich. If you believe that crypto, wealth is going to increase, then you have to believe that high end crypto art is going to be a good store of value as well. So that's kind of what we've been focused on, and we're obviously looking at new projects as well, but we haven't been investing a ton in kind of these new NFT projects lately. And I've had a call with an LP yesterday who kind of asked me where we're at on the NFT fund, and I said, look, last year we thought it might be 50-50, and now I would say it'll be more like 70-30 or something like that. And just because as a fund manager, you go in with you have to have a strategy going in, but I think you also have to adapt to the market, and that's kind of how we've adapted to this market. And that's again subject to change, but I will say obviously the PFP craze captured mainstream attention most. We've largely stayed away from that, other than punks, which again is the authentic PFP, which we have high conviction on, and it's consistent with our strategy across companies, cryptocurrencies, right? It's like what the authentic. is I think where most of the value is captured long term. And so there's been other things in NFTs that I think are authentic, kind of first of its kind, like nouns, right, which is kind of the intersection of NFTs and DAOs, and was the first of its kind to do that. So, but we, at the end of the day, we think NFTs as a new business model for creators isn't going anywhere. We're really excited about music NFTs as an example, and we think in 5 years there's going to be multi-billion-dollar asset classes for basically every category of creativity on the internet, and we want to be investing both in like the marketplaces and the products that are facilitating that, and also the assets themselves. So that's the thinking.
Yeah. Did you buy that ape punk with the fund or personally?
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah. When we had a 6529 right after he purchased the ringer, the goose, and we asked him, hey, how do you think about, because he said like some of the art that we buy, it's forever. Like we want to keep it and we don't intend to sell it. But he also has a fund. And we asked him the question, like, how do you think about one, valuing these things, and two, like disposing of them after, 10 years or so? And he was like, it's honestly a struggle. So I'm curious how you think about and how different your strategy is for the NFT fund versus some of your other like traditional venture funds, and thinking about kind of the life cycle of an investment.
Hmm. So this same question was asked by a lot of people when we started our crypto fund, and how we think about valuing, cryptocurrencies themselves, right? And at the end of the day, right, we all know cryptocurrencies and NFTs value is based on belief, and there's not cash flows. There's not traditional ways of valuing them, but we've always taken kind of a relative value approach, right? So, and this is how people. This is how people convinced traditional institutional investors to invest in Bitcoin, even, right? Is like, look, the total market cap of Bitcoin right now is 570 billion, and what's the total market cap of gold? I haven't looked in a while, but last I recall is around
8 trillion now,
7 or 8 trillion.
Yeah.
And if you believe in the digital gold narrative, then you must believe that Bitcoin is going to take uh, a big market share of that. So that's kind of how we think about NFTs too. If you look at like CryptoPunks, and I think a good comp for CryptoPunk would be something like Dogecoin. So Dogecoin, total market cap of Dogecoin right now is something like 11 billion, and I think the total market cap of Punks, if you do floor price, is less than a billion. So, do you think Punks could cut into that, or even be more culturally relevant than Dogecoin in 5 years as the space grows? That's kind of how I think about it. So we think of every like NFT creator that we invest in. So you could do CryptoPunks, you could do Beeple, and you could look at the total market cap of Beeple right now relative to some shitcoin, right? And there's a lot of shitcoins that have a higher market cap than Beeple right now. And I think something like Cardano or something you could use as a comp for Beeple. And if you believe that Beeple could be more culturally relevant in 5 years, and you believe the space is going to grow, then Beeple right now would be a good investment. Buying
Mhm.
politics is bullshit or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we think about it.
Talk to me about other categories. Obviously, we talked about art, but I think something people don't appreciate is that NFTs can be really anything. It could be an insurance contract. It could be, a real world asset expressed on chain. Just anything that is, again, bespoke and not standard could be converted, can be an NFT represented on chain, and then have all these kind of composability benefits and whatnot. How Are you looking at that? Are there any areas and sectors that you're excited about? I mean, there's a lot of chat now on real world assets, which in a way are NFTs. So if you
Mm.
express them in a way, so yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
I don't love real world assets. Um, I think real world assets will happen at some point, but you know, real world assets requires trust in a third party, and you know, the the, the things that have worked in crypto minimize trust and actually don't require much trust, if any, in a third party. So, um, we invested in Harbor, for example, out of one, and
Oh,
again,
Josh's company. Yeah.
yeah, yep, Josh and David Sachs, and again, that's not to say it can't work now. There may be reasons that it actually will work now. So, but it's a space that I think is interesting. Um, I'm just more excited about crypto native on chain assets that don't require. So, well, real world assets actually is a strong narrative, I think, too, right? That could be a good example of something that maybe has a strong narrative that people buy into. It's because, like, everyone on Wall Street, and we heard this in 2017, is like it sees everything happening in ICOs, and it's like, oh, we have real assets, we should bring these on chain, and so it's like a very obvious narrative. And one of the reasons I think it hasn't worked is because just the demand, right? Like crypto natives demand um, innovation, and bringing like a piece of real estate on chain is not really innovation. And again, I think it will work at some point because when everyone's on chain, there's a need for um, diversification in a portfolio, and crypto people to want to own real estate and stuff like that. But just in terms of what I think works early, I'd be much more excited about like music NFTs than real world
Yeah.
assets, for example. Is like music is a obviously a huge category for creativity, and it doesn't have the visual component, so I think it's still hard for people to wrap their heads around why music NFTs might be valuable. um, but that's a category. I mean, we see, and we're very much, I don't know if you guys have read any Rene Girard. Rene Girard would strongly recommend all your listeners check out, read The Scapegoat. I think that's his most easily digestible book as an intro. But we see this in crypto mimetic theory, and it's the idea that desire is not based on ourselves, but it's based on others. And so in crypto, you see that with NFTs, right? It's like when there's only a few people that want NFTs, a Beeple, no one wants it. But once everyone wants it, everyone wants it. And so I think as an NFT investor, that's a useful framework, because if you can invest in things before everyone wants them, and you have a thesis for why everyone might want them in the long term, then that can be a great investment. I think something like
Mhm.
NFT music could be that, right? Because we all appreciate music. People don't really, um, get excited about music NFTs yet. There is a small community that does, but once we have a Justin Bieber that mints a music NFT on sound or catalog before they're Justin Bieber, and then blows up, and that becomes a headline, just like Beeple was. That's a thing that could get kind of the mimetic desire going. So those are some of the things that I think about.
On this point of music NFTs, which I think they lend themselves well to, so to speak, fractionalization, right? You could presumably have a song and you issue these NFTs and they represent some sort of royalty stream that you're sharing with your audience or whatnot. What do you think about fractionalization? Are there use cases where it may lend itself well, and are there others that don't? Um, Particularly art versus something like music or something else.
Okay, well, one of the things, obviously, there was a lot of excitement about fractionalization, and maybe there still is. One of the things we've seen with fractionalization of NFTs is it kind of transfers ownership from strong hands to weak hands. And so much of NFTs is about belief and strong hands and people not wanting to sell. And that's true in traditional art, is kind of belief begets belief. And when you have some meme that then gets fractionalized, and anyone can own it, and then things change in the market and you have a bunch of people dump it. That's kind of what I think we've seen with a bunch of these fractionalization projects. So I like the idea of fractionalization, right? In theory, obviously, it's like you want inclusivity. You want anyone to be able to own a punk. Um, and I think we just haven't found the right balance yet. Like a lot of the things, I'm thinking there was like a Doge meme. Do you guys remember that one? That
Yeah, there
I
was.
don't know.
Yeah.
Well, there's two. One of them, Pleaser DAO,
Yeah,
did. Before that, there was a guy that bought it and fractionalized it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think that was like the biggest. You guys may know others, but that was the biggest I remember of like a
Mhm.
participation in a fractionalized NFT, and I don't think it's gone very well. And I think maybe we just haven't seen the right iteration of it. Because again, I think in theory you want like anyone to be able to own a
Yeah.
punk, and maybe punks or something that has a lot of strong hands already, and then you kind of allow a small but growing number of people to participate in a small way, and you roll it out a certain way. Um, you just need to figure out the right balance of like giving people the opportunity to own it while also making sure that they're not weak-handed and are just going to dump when things go wrong. That's been the
Yeah.
issue, I think, fractionalization to date.
On this point, I want to touch a little bit on the state of the NFT market. I mean, obviously, a lot of the floor prices have gone down quite a bit, and are basically have a higher beta to ETH and Bitcoin. Um, Feels to me like a lot of the market for a while has just been pure speculators. Um, and so I'm curious how is that a bad thing? I mean, people say, hey, look, NFTs are just another way to financialize art and people to speculate on this stuff and then go on leverage. And does that bother you? Do you think that's an issue? Or is that just a normal market where there's a bunch of speculators and you sort of accept that?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me, but it does. When I see that activity, it does give me a pause to participate. Okay, so when we invested in Super Air, we were like led the seed round in Super Air, and we're still very involved in Super Air, and I'm on the board. And what got me so excited about Super Air was that you had a bunch of collectors that were not signaling that they were collectors or trying to shill their bags or anything like that. And it wasn't about short term financial gain. They deeply believed in the art, and I think, were also motivated by financially, but they had a long term perspective rather than a short term perspective. And that's what really we look for in NFTs, right? So I think there's certainly there's a market of people that want to trade and speculate, and get short term gains on punks or something like that. There's this punks OTC guy that I think has done quite well, just buying and selling punks, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. There's a market for it, but yeah, I think what we look for is like when there's um, a strong community of quiet, confident holders, right? I think that makes like the best NFT community, and it can be frustrating, right? Because like Super Rare, for example, was really one of the first to push NFTs and crypto art forward, and they they've had great success, but then PFPs came along and kind of drowned out the success, and more people in the world have heard about Bored Apes than Super Rare, right? And that's when, again, when I get back, I think I said earlier that like authenticity, I think, is the right bet long term, even though in the short term, it can be quite frustrating when you have people that are better at marketing or better at business development or convincing celebrities to come on board or something like that. So yeah, I
Hmm.
forget the initial question. I think I went on a tangent, but that's kind of
That was a good rant. I like that, Nick. I've a one more question about NFTs here, Nick. You guys did the seed round of OpenSea. I think you put in like $2 million in the seed round.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you guys did pretty well on that. It sounds like. What is the future of OpenSea? And maybe a more targeted question here is, OpenSea has had a tough go of it. I'd say the last 18 months, folks like Blur have come around and eaten away at their market share. And I think one big question for OpenSea is, if you look at crypto businesses, specifically crypto marketplaces, the ones with the tokens that can align incentives between the users and the investors oftentimes do better, like the Uniswaps of the world, end up
Mhm.
doing pretty well because they align incentives. Does it make sense for OpenSea to have a token?
So I guess two questions. One, what are my general thoughts on OpenSea? Which is, I'm quite bullish on OpenSea. OpenSea, I think, is the best product at bringing crypto natives or new people, non-crypto natives, to crypto. Really, I mean, outside of centralized exchanges and things like that. So the volumes in the short term, I'm not as concerned about. It's not surprising that there's crypto native products that are very appealing to traders, and that have token incentives that come along. And I think OpenSea has made some very good moves. And again, I'm obviously biased, and I understand why there's negative sentiment on OpenSea, on crypto Twitter and things like that, because they don't have a token. And I think some people. I see this. I've seen this at Coinbase since I was there. Right, is that when you're the biggest, you have a target on your back, and
Yeah.
there's the most people that are happy with the product. You also have a small segment of people that are the loudest against it. Right. So I think, long story short, OpenSea is well positioned as NFTs come back. Right. Like and NFTs need to come back, or else OpenSea obviously has no business. But I strongly believe NFTs will come back, and I strongly believe, led by again some of the moves that OpenSea has made in terms of Seaport and OpenSea Pro, and bringing Nadav on as CTO. I think through an acquisition, I think they've made a lot of good moves that are kind of under the radar that will pay off if and when there's another NFT bull market. So
Yeah.
not that concerned about competitors that are
Mhm.
taking kind of market share in the short term. I don't think any of the products that I've seen are really geared towards a mainstream user.
Do you think they should have a token? Do you think they should eventually IPO? Like, what is the kind of exit as a VC investing in them? What is the exit plan there?
One of the things I really like about Devin is when DeFi summer was going on, right, in was it summer of 2020? We had Compound and Uniswap and all these tokens going crazy. I was setting up weekly meetings with Devin and Alex, trying to convince them to launch a token, because I do believe that for a marketplace, giving users ownership is incredibly powerful. We all understand that. And Devin and Alex were listening, but they were always pushing back, and they didn't feel it was the right time. And even before things really took off with OpenSea, a lot of people probably don't remember this. Rarible was a competitor, and Rarible launched the Rari token, and they got a bunch of initial volume too. So it looked like we were like, "Fuck, this shitty, NFT marketplace that doesn't have the product that we do. Just launch a token, and they're gonna, eat our lunch." And they were just focused on a product and building a product that was useful, and they didn't feel like it was the right time for a token. So I I trust and believe in Devin. Would be my answer. Like, I do think there's benefits to a token, and I see why people are pushing them to do a token. There's also a number of risks and trade-offs that come with that. And so I personally would like to see an OpenSea token at some point. but I also you can't question Devin's judgment. I think he has very good judgment and makes good moves, and so I'm not trying to push him to launch a token or something like that. I think hopefully then the time is right. They will give ownership to users in some way, shape, or form, because that is, I think,
Yeah.
how you need to grow a marketplace. So
Yeah. You were at Coinbase from when? 2013 through 2016?
mhm.
What do you think Wall Street most misunderstands about Coinbase right now?
um, I'm not sure I necessarily think they misunderstand anything. I don't know. I'm not that focused on Wall Street sentiment of Coinbase. I mean, I haven't sold a share that I got from working there. I'm still bullish on Coinbase. I think if anything, Wall Street just doesn't think crypto is real, or kind of maybe lumps all crypto with FTX. And I think like the SEC and isn't doing it any favors. So I would say, look, Coinbase has been a great company for over a decade, done right by consumers, and um, I think again the truth is nuanced, right? And I think the narrative maybe in Wall Street might still be crypto is interesting and experimental, but there's not much real there, and is never going to be super meaningful in the world. I think if you believe that, then Coinbase isn't interesting. If you believe that crypto is interesting, I think for public market investors, Coinbase is the best public market exposure.
What do you think of Base, the Coinbase L2?
I'm not super excited about it, but at the same time, I think it's probably a good move for Coinbase. It's not something I'm paying attention a lot to be honest. But um, I think it's good for Coinbase to be doing innovative stuff. I mean, when I was at Coinbase, I was the guy that was I launched the Coinbase tip button in 2013, which was, this is when we thought that
Payments?
Bitcoin
Yeah.
micropayments was going to be a big thing for creators. And that didn't go anywhere. But I think it was good that we were pushing on new stuff, and I think it's still good that Coinbase is pushing on new stuff. So I like the idea and the direction. Do I think it's going to be super meaningful for the business or for crypto? Probably not.
Hmm.
Could you dive a little bit more into that? I mean, some say, hey, listen, Coinbase has all the users, and if they can allow for users to kind of enter this world via Base, then all the better. Would you push back on that, or I'm just kind of curious to understand a little bit more why you're not as excited?
I mean, look at Threads. Have you guys used Threads since it came out a couple weeks ago?
No.
I'm generally skeptical when the argument is, oh, this company that's useful for this has all the distribution, and they're going to be able to port it over to this new thing, right? That's just my general bias. So again, I can't say. I'd love to hear from someone who has like
Well, to be fair, like Instagram stories did kill Snapchat, but yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, that was a more that was a feature within a product, right? So I think there is a difference there. And again, I'm using that as an example to say
Mhm.
that's my bias. I'm always very skeptical of an existing company that tries to get in a new business just leveraging their existing distribution. So that's kind of why I've dismissed it. Again, I'd love to hear from someone that has a strong
Mhm.
bull case for it, because I haven't looked at it super
Yeah.
closely.
I guess transitioning a bit, especially during bear markets, we all crypto natives get asked the question like, look, point to me as something that is mainstream. Like, what is this all useful for? And I think it's the hardest question to ask, to answer, being in the industry, because certainly you can point to NFTs, and yeah, like there is traction, but it's not mainstream, and it's still very difficult for most people to get onboarded, get started with crypto. And you can point to regulations, you can point to bad UI, UX, whatever it is. What's your timeline? I mean, obviously, you believe that at some point a lot of these things are going to be mainstream, but what's like your working timeline, and what are the catalysts to get to that state of the world, like in 5-10 years, maybe more?
Hmm. Well, again, I think mainstream, it depends on your definition and it depends on your vantage point. Because, like, when I was at Coinbase in 2013, if you told me that then where we'd be now, I wouldn't have believed that. And that would where we are now would have surpassed my wildest dreams in terms of cultural relevance of crypto, right? Like, it's still not widely used by billions of people, but the cultural relevance of crypto, I think you could argue, is mainstream. So I think certainly we need more, and I think what gets us there, there's really two things. I think what most people would say would be UX, and I'm sympathetic to that kind of argument, but I don't really buy it. I think the UX is okay, and if there's interesting enough consumer behaviors, then it's good. Like, so I don't think UX is necessarily the answer. Though, things like smart contract wallets, um, we are investing in that category, and I do think it's worth um, building in that space. And I mean, we have since 2019 when we invested in Ethereum. Ethereum was like one of the first smart contract wallets that basically was on mainnet. And when DeFi Summer took off, it ended up being a couple $100 to create a wallet. So mainnet got too costly for smart contract wallets. And I am excited about what I'm seeing now for smart contract wallets on L2s, like Polygon and Arbitrum and Optimism, because I think that is something that is going to help. I don't think that's going to. I think that is, kind of a nice to have that maybe give a slight bump. But what we really need is new consumer behaviors that are compelling, and that's what things like prediction markets, what things like DAOs, decentralized social networks. These are new consumer behaviors that I think are going to be more impactful than the UX. The example I give to people is like, look at Dapper Labs, and look at NBA Top Shots. Right? There's a lot of early excitement about NBA Top Shots. Oh, it has this great centralized UX that makes it easy for people to get on, and that worked okay, in a bull market in a moment in time. But I mean, if you look at the flow NFT volume versus Ethereum NFT volume, I think in the past month, flow has done like 1/100th of Ethereum in terms of NFT volume. So I don't know. That's an example I used recently to someone that was talking about UX, because I think it can be somewhat helpful, but I think what we really need is like compelling um, behaviors that give people true ownership and allow people to participate in organizations or things like that in new ways. So that's and timeline. I'm the reason I'm in venture is I'm not good at predicting timing on a short-term basis. Right, the benefit of building or having like a venture fund is you're measured over a 10-year time horizon or so. So
Sure. I haven't heard you mention stable coins, which to me feel like a Trojan horse, a killer use case for the vast majority of the world that wants to hold and own dollars, and then enter DeFi and then have exposure to a lot of financial products, credit, but putting credit for aside, because you could talk about how credit's inefficient in DeFi, but like just financial products that are not possible or available in their jurisdiction. curious to get your thoughts on that.
We all know the importance of stablecoins in crypto today, and there's clearly product market fit for stablecoins as a trading vehicle on decentralized exchanges for people, or centralized exchanges for people that want to trade in and out of a volatile coin, and make money in trading. So that's really the main use case for stablecoins today, in my view. And I think what we need is stablecoins, and what we really haven't seen yet is stablecoins as a medium of exchange. And frankly, I'm surprised that take NFTs. NFTs is a category of e-commerce, and
Denominated in ETH.
99% of NFT volume is still ETH or Solana or whatever, rather than a stablecoin, and that's been surprising to me. So I think it's just a question of timing. I do think like we have a portfolio company called Bridge, Bridge.xyz. The founders are project manager and engineer from Coinbase that are fantastic, and their thesis, which I think is a good one, is one of the main reason that we haven't seen stablecoins take off yet as a medium of exchange is the developer tools. The like the stablecoins have been very focused on just like issuance and not actually making a good developer experience. So they're now their APIs for fintech companies that are outside of crypto that maybe want to use stablecoins on the back end, and they're finding actually pretty good success right now for with like a use case would be a DAO that needs to pay taxes, but doesn't want to touch fiat currency or a bank, and so Bridge facilitates a DAO to convert stablecoins to USD to pay taxes, as an example. So, I think APIs that make it easy for people to convert fiat to stables, and developers to offer these types of products to end users, I think could be meaningful. So yeah, that's I got a plug in there for one of our companies, but
That's a good. You got to get the plug in there, Nick. You got to get the plug in. Nick,
Well, there's been a couple plugs out there, but yeah, it's good. It's welcome.
I want to. I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to make sure that we just cover the presidential election in next year's presidential election. You've been spending time with a couple of the candidates. I think you hosted a dinner for DeSantis. You might have spent time with RFK. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't know if there are others. Would love to just gauge like what is your sense of how important crypto is to these candidates?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I've never been interested in politics really, or getting involved in politics, but I think crypto is at a point where politics matters to some degree, and I'm a single issue voter. I think I view crypto as the most important thing for human freedom for the next 30 years, and so that's kind of my motivation for spending time with anyone running for president. I think, is crypto important to both RFK and DeSantis? Yes, I think on the list of importance, how important? I would say it's probably not top 5, but I think both of them in particular are pro freedom, and they see what the current administration is doing to crypto in terms of pushing innovation and entrepreneurship offshore, and potentially being restrictive to freedom, and that's kind of the lens by which they look at it. So I think like they're both different. Like to me, Bobby Kennedy, he instinctively recognizes that Bitcoin is important and important for freedom, And is he getting in the weeds with me on Ethereum or DeFi or things like that? No, but he understands the importance of crypto and instinctively, sees that it is pro freedom, and so he's in favor of it. And he's got some pretty interesting ideas that I'm sure you guys have seen around, the federal government buying Bitcoin to back the dollar, also potentially eliminating cap gains tax for Bitcoin, and so yeah, I think there's probably a few things. One, he sees it as beneficial to human freedom. Two, he understands that there are some many single issue voters that and a strong community that for a grassroots campaign like him, tapping into that could potentially be beneficial. So yeah, that's kind of my view on him. And then DeSantis, I think he's a little more in the weeds. And I think he's a very smart guy that is not great at perception, but is good at understanding issues and getting shit done. And so, like he came out very early and said CBDCs are a no-go in the state of Florida, which is a nuanced view. Most people, I think, when they saw that, didn't even know what CBDCs were, but he took that stance, which I think is a nuanced and correct view. And he was also I don't think he's the only one, but he was going to do more last year, particularly in NFTs. But then FTX, happened, and that just, I think, put a pause, for him and a lot of people like him. So
Yeah.
I think they both, again, it's probably number, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 on their list of kind of important issues. But the fact that, again, we're in 2023 and I'm talking to potential presidents about this stuff. If you asked me that, if that was a possibility, 10 years ago in 2013, I would have thought you were crazy. So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty
It's a good
awesome
place
for
to be.
the space that it's come this far. So
Yeah. Nick, man, this was awesome chat. I appreciate you you coming on. We should do this again soon.
definitely, yeah, enjoyed chatting with you guys, and always happy to do it again.
And good luck building your bunker.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.